Hello gamers, Sultan the Gamerman here with my honest thoughts on Marvel's Avengers, the loading screen simulator. No, seriously, I have a PS4 Pro in a well-ventilated area, and for me, at least a third of this game was just waiting around staring at loading screens or the hero's asses on the Quinjet. Now, if you think that I'm gonna go easy on this game just because I'm a huge Marvel fan, well then...
You're unbearably naive.
In this video, I'm going to talk about Marvel's Avengers looks, its sounds, its story, and what it feels like to don the hero suit and trying to punch the living crap out of every bad guy and robot that comes your way. That's if you're hero enough to wait out the loading screens. But be careful.
It might take a while.
I want to start off with how this game looks. Its graphics, the animations, the way the main characters and the enemies, the environments, and everything else appears on screen. Let's get the short list of good stuff out of the way first. The fighting animations are mostly on point for all of the characters, and the enemies, while not too varied or exciting, are passable. Some environments, especially the ones involving nature, are pretty too. Now we have to move on to the bad and the ugly. As I already said in my first impressions video, the way the Avengers look just doesn't do it for me. And maybe this is just because I'm too used to the MCU Avengers, but to me these guys look like cheap knockoffs. A little bit more about the game's environments. They do not have a lot of variety. The story missions are different enough, sure, but the side missions, including the hero-specific missions, are almost like the second environment copied the homework of the first environment, then passing it on to the third and fourth and so on until you get either a snowy forest, a not-so-snowy forest, a desert hillside, a lab, or... wait, no, that's kind of it. It just gave me the feeling that when faced with the problem of adding variety to their environments, the developers were like...
We don't do that here.
Now I want to talk about the character animations. As I said, they're mostly okay, but I have one thing that I just cannot get over. Why oh why in the name of all that is holy does the game have to do a 2 millisecond mini pause every single time that I hit an enemy with Captain America? I mean, it's just so frustrating that even though I like Captain America, every time that I had to play as him, I kind of felt like... Looking back at the recorded gameplay, I noticed that the pause was there for all the other characters as well. I just didn't really notice it when I was playing. I guess it just wasn't as obvious there. Anyway, let's move on to sound. The sound in Marvel's Avengers is mostly alright. The hits on enemies feel like they have impact, the projectile sounds, the battles are all good, and I can honestly say I have found no really frustrating things with the game's sound. The voice actors are also decent. Unfortunately, they're not much more. As I said, Banner's and Kamala's voice actors mostly steal the show, and Thor's alright, but the others are... they just don't do it for me. And there really isn't anything more that I could say about the sounds the Avengers make, so let's move on to story. Marvel's Avengers has an interesting premise, yes, and especially at first, it made me want to sit down and find out as much as I can about what was going on. It also had a few twists and turns, but they weren't as big as I think the developers and/or publisher thought they were going to be. And despite these things, the game story is intriguing, with a few captivating scenes as well as some hidden layers that I found to be quite interesting. Unfortunately, even the best stories in a game can be ruined by an oh-so-f***ing important element: gameplay. Here, I would like to apologize in advance if I burst out shouting, swearing, cursing, crying, rambling, mumbling, or just simply praying for redemption of the poor souls who thought that this type of gameplay was going to keep players interested in this game for more than just a few minutes past finishing the main story, if that. After the initial charm wore off and I got to peek behind the curtains of this game, I was like... I mean, every single mission in this game is go here, destroy this, take out these bad guys, or defend these good guys or this spot, and go and fight. Again and 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 again. Until the game shows you a little bit of mercy and ends already. In all my years of gaming, I have never seen missions that were so mind-numbingly boring, made with such laziness. I mean, remember what I said in my first impressions video? Now, having played the game for a few hours, I can say this. Not as much of a cash grab as you'd think. The more I play this game, the more I think that the publisher or developer or whoever the f*** is responsible for this, and I'm going to use as mild a term as possible here, boring disaster of a microtransaction-packed games-as-a-service snooze fest, was really just trying to capitalize on the MCU movie's success, hoping to make a quick buck off it. Anyway, let me talk about another couple of major features in this game, the looting system and the leveling and skill trees. Now, you go out, complete missions, get XP, gain levels, and on the way you can open some chests containing items, or you can get them from beating up enemies as well and use them to make your character stronger. Now, what I don't get here is, why do the characters need to have such complex skill trees? I mean, even if you're a fanatic and are willing to suffer through the unbearable grind to unlock the skills for one hero, let alone the 6, yeah, no, you heard me right, 6 characters that you can play as in this game. And looting isn't anything to drool over either. As I said before, you find loot throughout the missions and you put on whatever's best. But no matter what you pick up, it doesn't show up on the character, because looting in this game isn't cosmetic. Oh no. Stuff that actually shows up on the characters are reserved for people willing to put up with the grind to get the in-game currency and buy them, or the ones willing to open their wallets and get them via microtransactions. Speaking of microtransactions, please let me know in the comments if I'm too stupid to understand this, but why in the hell does the game want me to pay for a stupid-ass item or cosmetic or whatever when it says right there on the screen that it's free? I just simply can't wrap my head around this, and it almost makes me go. Let's move on to the game's controls. They're mostly okay, but at times they can get unresponsive, and that can be super frustrating. The control layout is pretty standard. The sticks are used for moving, the main buttons are used for light and heavy attacks, jumping and dodging, and the triggers are used for aiming, shooting, and special attacks. Easy as they come, really, and thank Odin for that, because if the game's controls are complicated and hard to manage, I would have left the game in the dust in the first couple of hours with an angry Moving on to combat. It's fun at first, but it gets old real quick. As I said earlier, in the game you can play as 6 unique heroes, each with their different skills and abilities. But not really. What I mean is their skill trees are very similar. I think Iron Man's is the most unique because his abilities are broken down into moves with lasers, pulse cannons, and rockets, and that made for a refreshing experience. The rest of them are almost identical, with only the names and animations being changed, and I'm not saying that's wrong or anything. In fact, I like combat with most of the heroes. But the character that I enjoyed playing most as was Thor. Without him, the game would have been quite a bit blander, but he was a real redeemer. I think him being my favorite of all the Avengers had something to do with it too, but playing as Thor felt really empowering. All the lightning surrounding you, the hammer sounds as you bash the bad guys' heads in, the fact that whoever you threw your hammer at stayed pinned under it until you called it back, which was a really nice addition, by the way, and it feels like a lot of attention, and I mean real, genuine attention was given to make playing as this character feel as quote-unquote real as possible. In contrast with the kind of lackluster power levels of the other guys, Thor didn't feel at all like the God of Thunder, but rather like Now let's move on to what is, for me, the most annoying thing for almost all of the characters. That is the basic walking/running animations. I mean, I honestly don't know where the devs got their inspiration when designing these very basic animations for the characters, but it sure as hell wasn't real life. It just yanked me right out of the game. I mean, I almost burst out laughing every time I saw one of these guys wobbling around, especially Thor. I mean, maybe it's his overeagerness to fly everywhere in the game and that led to his leg muscles atrophying, or maybe he just gets a little too excited before each mission and drops a giant deuce in his pants, because in all honesty, Thor looks like he's running around carrying a massive number 2 in his breeches, making one of the most badass characters in the Marvel universe look like he needs adult diapers. Not to mention that Black Widow is part leapfrog in this game, and a heavy one at that. In conclusion, the gameplay in Marvel's Avengers is kind of like a blow-up doll. Maybe fun at first, but you can get bored of it really quick. And I think that more time should have been spent, even if that meant delaying the game, to refine almost every aspect of it. I have but one thing to say to the creators of this game.
You had one job.
Just the one?
And sadly, this gameplay looks like what Thor filled his breeches with while running. As you know, I measure playtime in weekends, so the magic number for this game is 3. It took me 3 weekends to complete Marvel's Avengers. But that was only because it didn't glue me to the controller or the TV screen as I believe a game should, so after about 3 or 4 hours, I was all heroed out for the day. I believe that if you really wanted to, you could get through the game in a single weekend. But that would most likely cause a lot of
wounded screams, mainly whimpering, a great deal of complaining, and tales of sprained deltoids and gout.
Marvel's Avengers, the video game, is not good. I mean, sure, it does have a few moments, but all in all, it's way too repetitive and lackluster. The story is interesting enough, but unfortunately it's sullied by the stupid and dreary gameplay. I mean, this game had all the makings of becoming so much more if done not just to cash in from the success of the movies, but as a respected and honored project with enough time to make it from the lump of gold that it is, and unfortunately probably will remain, into the beautiful diamond that it could have been. And because of that, on a scale of 1 to 5, for me, it just doesn't go higher than 2.5. This is one game that I probably won't be returning to. Alright guys, thanks for watching. Be sure to leave a like if you've enjoyed this review, subscribe to my channel if you want to see more videos from me, and ring that bell button if you want to be notified when I post them. I'm Zoltan the Gamer Man, and these have been my honest thoughts on Marvel's Avengers. Take care, be well, and don't forget, keep on gaming.